Good afternoon. Thank you, Richard, for that really good introduction and for giving me the best slot of the day right after that lunch. And it's very nice to meet all of you young leaders, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm an urban planner. I don't play video games, but a friend advised me it's the easiest way to explain what an urban planner does. So you guys know City? It's pretty much what I do for a living. So I work with the government, with landowners, with communities, and pretty much helping them figure out what's the best use of their land and what can we do with their communities. So we work with rural local government units, which is the one in the picture in Bulacan. It's the biggest town in Bulacan. We work with very urban areas as well, like Juan City in Metro Manila, Alaminos, Manila, and Makati. And really, it's all about balance because different people in cities and communities have sometimes varying demands. So of course, we need to think about the wealthy people. We have to think about those who can afford to live in the middle of the city. We think of the investors, of tourists. So there are really varying demands on land, on our finite resources, and we help make sure that we are quite responsible with how we use these resources. Okay. So we have an interdisciplinary team of architects, planners, engineers, and as Richard mentioned, since last year, I'm managing two companies, so Palafox Associates and Palafox Architecture. Most of the people who report to me are older than me, and some of them have been there much longer, so that's quite a challenge. But it is a fun job, and it's quite fulfilling. So some of our projects include golf course communities, schools, housing for the urban poor, tourism, master plans, etc. Okay, so we've also done projects abroad, such as in the Middle East, and also around the region, such as in Malaysia, and in other places that I've never even heard about until I was involved in the project, like the Solomon Islands and Djibouti. Okay. This is a master plan for Global Gateway Logistics City. So it's in Clark. It's about 170-hectare property. And really, we want to make sure that first we consider people in the plan. So we think about the jobs that we'll be creating, make sure that people who live there and work there will have good quality of lives. And then after that, we think about the environment. So we think about the efficient use of resources, we think about smart transport, green building, and then we think about profit and development. We also work in beautiful places like in Palawan. So this is an island in Coron, and we were able to convince the investor who first wanted to put 200 villas. I told him I only wanted to put 6. So we met halfway, and we're quite happy because less than 25% of the land is built on, and all the buildings that will be there will be on stilts to have very minimal impact. Very minimal footprint in the environment. Okay. Here's a green building. So our company, as a member of the American Institute of Architects, signed what we call the 2030 Challenge. So by that year, all the buildings that we build, that we design, should be zero net energy, meaning they produce the same amount of energy that they consume. Okay. We also work with certain government agencies, such as the DCDA, so we plan for free port zones. We're also currently working with the Philippine Navy on 2 naval stations. So it's quite interesting to work with varying clients, with varying personalities as well. And it's such an honor to be involved in projects that include national security, food security, bringing in jobs, investments, and increasing tourists. For example, we're quite happy because we did the tourism master plan for Ilocos Norte, which is quite an ignored destination. And just within 3 years of finishing the master plan, the tourist arrivals have already increased by more than 5 times. So those are the kinds of We call it psychic income, which is even more important than salaries, than monetary income. So how did I get here? I grew up in the suburbs for 15 years. So I grew up in the south of Manila. And then when I was doing my master's in economics, my family moved to a place that my father's company designed, Rockwell Center. And I was amazed at the difference between city living, condo living, and living in the suburbs where you were practically paralyzed if you didn't have a car. Whereas Rockwell Center was designed so that everything is within 400 meters, so that the residents and the people who work there can just walk to where they need to go. We lived on the 35th floor, and I would sometimes wake up before sunrise and just watch the city wake up. So the view was Pasig River, Guadalupe Bridge, and I could see how early I should leave for Pasig to my school, depending on how the traffic was. So that encouraged me to get into urban planning. Okay. And it hasn't been easy, so it's quite difficult to lead about 100 professionals and to be involved in such big projects that involve big money for our clients and quality of life of the stakeholders. But I have learned some lessons from my own experiences, from my own mistakes, and from some of my mentors. So the first one is have genuine care and concern for people. For example, Metro Manila today has 20 million people, and 4 million of those are informal centers. So we can't just always think about our own well-being, because it's not just out of charity, it just makes perfect sense if you think about where will the key workers live, where will the urban poor live, because the more there are people who live farther from the city, the worse traffic gets, because we'll have the challenge of bringing everyone into the cities in the morning and out in the evening. And then it's always good to consult people. So at the start of every project, we consult if it's indigenous people, women's groups, the handicapped, government, so the barangays, the top investors, the top taxpayers. And we value everyone's input, so we can't belittle everyone. There's an instance, for example, we planned an eco-zone up north, and there was a lack of data about flooding. So we had interviewed the eldest people in the community way before flood study was done. And they were right, because they had remembered that there was a big flood from 30 years ago, and we were able to plan it for that, even before the hydrological studies were done. So when we did the plan for San Juan City, about 1/3, believe it or not, of the residents in San Juan are informal centers. And we really wanted to encourage the right kind of investment and change the demographics, but at the same time, accommodate where will the people live, because not all informal centers are moms who are just waiting around at home. Think about more than half of our policemen don't have proper housing. So more than half of our policemen are informal centers, are teachers as well, and some other key workers. And usually, we tell them where they can't live before telling them where they can live. So what we did instead was to encourage a different kind of affordable housing instead of the usual one that we see in the middle of nowhere. I remember talking to one community leader, a lady, and she was saying, you tell us we have to leave danger zones, but even to death zones, where it's not accessible to any job, to any electricity or water. So what we did instead for San Juan was to have multi-family accommodations with green walls, with plants that they could also eat, so edible plants. And quality of life is quite good because only 60% of it is built on, so 40% is open space. So it's even better than a lot of the real estate that's going around in the market now for sale. Okay. We just like showing before and after pictures. So this is an actual shot, and we're saying, how about just following our laws? Because we do have existing policies for setbacks for esteros, and even improving the quality of life for the residents that are by these rivers and waterways. This is for an area in North Harbor in Manila Bay. So again, well, first of all, why put a wall facing the Manila Bay when this is a key amenity? Elsewhere in the world, it's very prime properties. So from this, we said, how about creating something like this? So instead of a cramped space, how about inspiring residents instead? The next lesson is communication. So this is perhaps the most important. And a lot of effort, a lot of patience is involved. One of my biggest projects right now is San Vicente in Palawan. So it's 160,000 hectares. Imagine, Boracay White Beach is 4 kilometers. They have a white beach that's 14 kilometers. So there's a lot of land speculation. Already the big landowners have bought properties there. But at the same time, the poverty threshold of the 30,000 residents who live there, 50% of them are below the poverty line. We wanted to include everyone's concerns. How do we encourage investments without turning off these developers, these landowners? Because of course they want to get their ROI, but at the same time, how do we integrate the indigenous people, the farmers and the fishermen? Because a lot of them can't wait. They just want to sell their property really cheap and move perhaps to Puerto Princesa and to Manila. But they need to be there because, of course, these investors will need people to be working and to be supplying to their hotels and to their resorts. And one of the suggestions, recommendations that we said more than 12 months ago was to increase the setback from the waterfront. So elsewhere in the world, 50-meter setback from the average high tide mark. In the Philippines, it's only 25 meters. In Boracay, they made it 30 meters quite recently, but we were suggesting 50 meters. So at first, the landowners were telling us, oh, that's impossible, that's illegal, and all that. And we're working with TIEZA and the Department of Tourism. And now, it's the landowners themselves who are bragging about the 50-meter setback because they know that their properties will be protected. Another is, there should be no gap between what you say and what you do, or honor your word. Or to me, this is the most accurate definition of integrity. So don't say you're nationalistic if you're not very honest with paying your taxes, or don't talk about complaining about corruption when on your way to work you bribe the MMA guy, so you don't get fined. And it's always a challenge even for myself as a leader. Of course, I have to be a good example. So it's hard to tell my team to come on time, to work hard, be diligent. So, but really, that's what I think about. The responsibility is on me, so I should be a good leader because I can't expect them to do something that I myself can't follow. So one of my advocacies is walking. So really, walking is the most basic mode of transport. And I think this graphic shows it well. Let's say 40 of us rode by cars, compared to 40 people in a bus, or 40 of us cycled or walked. So imagine how much less infrastructure we'll need. Maybe we wouldn't need all these flyovers and skyways that are being constructed. But it can't go around saying this, so I have to walk the talk, unintended. And I walk to work, sometimes in these shoes. I don't own a car. And it's just really good, so you can't say you're after the environment if you don't try to do your share. Okay. Success usually comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. So as Richard mentioned, I do have big shoes to fill. I hear that almost every day. And when I started working with my dad, at first it would upset me because it's quite unfair. He had 30 years head start. I'm just starting and all that. So I decided instead to be focused on cause or advocacies and just be good and do good and make sure that I serve my country well, I work well, and I serve my clients well. And then when that happened, that's when my work suddenly was being recognized. So last year, I'm part of the inaugural list that made it to the 40 under 40. So I'm the only urban planner in the list among several developers, predominantly from the US, China, and Europe. And if I may acknowledge, because one of my nominators is here, Eric Manuel, thank you for nominating me for the award. Be the first to appreciate your value. I remember at one town hall meeting that I led, we were telling landowners, both businessmen who had factories and some of their big houses on the river, they didn't have cell taps. And one of them said, Iha, you still have a lot to learn, you don't lecture me. So that's an isolated case. And oftentimes, I realize I'm the one who puts my own limits. I'm the one who sets all these limits. And we should actually own it, being young. Those of us in the room who were born after 1980, say we millennials, or the we generation, me, but will also be the ones that will change the world and really work on the environment and transforming our communities. So we do own that. As well as being a woman, I was part of an advisory panel in Sanya, China, that's in Hainan province. So the ULI was invited by the Hainanese government to give advice on how to develop their island. Because they were very dependent on the China market, but the more affluent the Chinese were becoming, they wanted to get out of China and see other places instead. So they wanted to encourage tourists from outside of China. And I was very nervous entering into that panel because the ULI has been doing this for 70 years. And I'm the first one to be below 35 years old. And in that panel, I was the only woman and the youngest. But when I got there, not once the other panelists who were developers, one developed ski resorts in Colorado, another developed resorts in Hawaii and California, another was executive of Ogilvy, the marketing group. But not once did I hear from them, oh, you know, you have to learn from us, or not once did they mention about my age. And it's quite good because they were very appreciative of my inputs just because I had a different background. So I think that's a value that all of us can think about when we feel that we're too young to be part of something. And as Sheila, I'm also in the real estate and construction sector, so it's quite macho. And just own it, because sometimes just out of courtesy, I feel some of my clients who are taipans or important government officials, you will maybe listen to me more out of courtesy because I'm a woman, but at least that's an advantage that we could use. Okay, education is important, but imparting it is another. So I keep studying. So by the age of 24, I already had 2 degrees in economics and in urban planning. I went back to school. My assistant Patty just wanted to put the Barcelona shot because it's cool. But I learned from that as well. So this is a course, it's called Advanced Management Program with the UANP and with ESN Barcelona. And for a day, they made us play with the FCT team, and we learned because they were explaining the similarities with leading a group, with teamwork, either you're in a company or in the football field. And then also, even if it's difficult, I try to teach my clients who I know are also, they know their community more, but I know that it's my duty to explain to them, what are best practices, what would be possibly good for your stakeholders. So in relation to that, value isn't anything until it is shared. So I'm quite the introvert. I still get nervous even if I speak in public every other week. But I feel that that's because there are very few urban planners. So there are less than 800 of us, considering there are 1,600 LGUs in the Philippines. There are more than 80 provinces. There's less than 800 of us. So to do my share, on my own I teach. So I teach wannabe planners in Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. I'm also a consultant to Senator J.B. Ejercito as the chairman of the Senate Committee for Housing and Resettlement. And I sit as vice president of the National Group of Urban Planners. So these are, added duties to my already busy schedule, but it gives me that sense of fulfillment because Palafox Associates can't do everything. Although we are, for-profit company, we can't do everything. If you really want to transform the Philippines, you want more people to be equipped with the knowledge and expertise. Okay. Travel and experience the Philippines and the rest of the world. I remember I was leading a community resource mapping session in Panglao, Bohol. And one of the stakeholders told me, you can't plan for the island or the waterfront if you don't know what's underwater. So he told me to learn diving. So I still don't have my diver's license, but I always remember what this guy said. But in relation to that, I was thinking, okay, I can't plan properties if I haven't walked the site myself. So some of the areas that we plan are not very safe areas, but we should at least have an idea of what the area is like, what are the challenges, what are the risks, what are the opportunities. The picture on the top right is in Siargao. So the guide told us they recently discovered a cave, so less than 50 people have entered the cave, and that there are many snakes, but we have to go see it. So as a leader, I had to go first, and some of my team members had to follow me. But it's good to have experiences like these. And also, it's like a paid tourist, aside from experiencing and seeing new parts of the Philippines and new parts of the world. The one on the lower left is from Solomon Islands, so these are fellow urban planners that I was happy to meet. And the one on the right, so I took a risk. There was an invitation from a Swedish company to just see their office in Stockholm. So when I was in Barcelona for the course, I decided to pay a visit. And out of the trip came a collaboration. So we're now in partnership with one of the biggest architecture, engineering, planning firms in Sweden. Find your mentors and honor them through the life that you live. So my mom is here, my sister is here, and I really value the support and the teachings that I get from my parents, from my brother and my sister. And a lot of times people say it's lonely in the top. It's difficult to be a leader because you don't really know the full sentiments of the members of your team. But you'd be surprised and honored to find out that a lot of people would want to teach you, to mentor you. Sometimes you don't even have to ask. So the ones at the bottom left are some of my professors from the UANP. So I graduated in 2003, but until now, we're in touch. They greet me on my birthday. They always ask me how I am. I remember I had a tough job of speaking at the mining conference. So I was the environmentalist at the mining conference. And they were teaching me about, what the points that I could say to make sure that I'm objective and I give the right advice. The image in the center is from Korea. So I'm also active in a group called Business and Professional Women. We started a chapter in Makati. And really, the purpose is when I go abroad, because I go abroad often for conferences or on my own as a traveler, and sometimes I'm asked, oh, you're Filipino, my mate's Filipino. And, there's so many bright and intelligent and hardworking women and men in the Philippines. So all of us have that duty to raise our flag when we go abroad and to tell them there are business and professional men and women in the Philippines. And some of the women I've met in the group are mentors of mine. So in the picture, Lexi Schultz and Jeannie Habelosa, and many other great women there. And it's good to have, that support from them. The one on the top right is Mayor Tom Murphy. So he was the other guy who nominated me for the ULI award. And he transformed Pittsburgh. If he hadn't done his plans ahead of time, Pittsburgh would have ended up like how Detroit is today. So he's a mentor, as well as the gentleman at the bottom right. So he's Carlos Cavalle. He sits on the board of Spanish companies such as Lara and FCB. And yeah, such a good teacher. Okay. So the last is know your purpose. It's very easy, it's very tempting to be jaded about the state of our cities, the state of our communities in the Philippines, especially if that's what you do for a living. So, you know, some people say, don't you give up? Really, like, you really have to deal with those government officials. And that's, on top of that, it's challenging to be the leader that about 100 people look up to, as well as the other urban planners in the Philippines. But really, it would be good if you're anchored by a sense of purpose, so know your purpose, and by your principles as well. So with that, I will end, and this is our company vision and mission. When we had started, I mean, when I joined the company, it was more about being number one, being the biggest in the Philippines, being the biggest in Asia. But now, it's more about Palafox Associates and Palafox Architecture Group giving back and making a positive contribution to people, improving their quality of life, and the state of our natural and built environments. Thank you.
Okay, very good.